Hey, it's Denise from ôهë.com, and on this video I'm going to show you how to make slippers on a 24 peg loom. For the supplies, you need, of course, your 24 peg loom. Some way of marking your pegs, I'm using rainbow loom rubber bands. Of course, you need your hook and some scissors, something to measure your foot, and you need your yarn needle. And if you're going to put a button, then it's a good idea to use one that's going to fit through the hole of your button. And you're going to need some matching thread. I usually just take my 4-ply yarn apart and take 2 of it and use that as matching thread. And you need some way of counting your rows. A counter is a good thing, but you can always use some paper and pen. We're going to start by figuring out how many rows you need for your particular shoe. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to measure your foot while you're standing, because that's going to give you a better understanding of what's the length of your shoe. And I'm going to explain in inches. Remember that it's 2.54 centimeters for every inch. So keep that in mind when doing your calculations if you use centimeters instead of inches. So when you measure your foot, do it in 2 parts. You got the front part here, which will be the foot part, and then you have the back part that will be the heel. We're going to be using approximately, and this is not exact, so please don't throw rocks if it doesn't turn out. You're going to need approximately 4 rows for every inch that you need for your shoe. So this is the example we're going to use for the formula. Here we see 3 inches for the foot part, but to keep your shoe from being way too big, we're going to subtract 1 of those, and so that leaves us with 2 inches. So 2 times 4, 8. Now we go to the back part to figure out the number of rows. Here we have an additional 4 inches. So 4 times 4, 16. So there you have it. You know that you need 8 rows for the front and 16 rows for the back on this particular shoe. Now you have to do the math for yours. I've marked my loom, like I said, with rubber bands, and I've counted 3 going towards the right and 3 going towards the left. If you have an extremely wide foot, then you can consider going down to 2, but on most socks, you're going to need to go ahead and mark off 6 of them. 3 to the right, 3 to the left. I'm going to be knitting with 2 strands of yarn as one, because this is a medium number 4 worsted weight. If you're using anything like a chunky number 5 or a 6, then you know that you only need 1 strand. Alright, we're going to start off with our usual slip knot. And I'm going to put my slip knot right here on the anchor peg. You can put it on any one of these pegs for now. You're going to take it off after a couple of rounds. Don't do the slip knot as your first loop, please. Alright, and I'm going in the counterclockwise direction. You can go in any direction. It has no effect on this project, okay? We're going to wrap every peg. Once you reach that last peg right before the ones that are marked, you're going to wrap it and then bring your working yarn forward. And we're going to do a flat stitch for this first row. So go ahead and put the working yarn over the existing loop and knit off. Go to the next one and pull on it to tighten this bulky loop right here. Alright, you're going to do that for the first few. If you find that this is becoming unworkable, then instead of laying it completely flat, just turn your working yarn in a little, and that becomes a U-wrap. And sometimes those are a little easier to work with. Alright, either one of them is going to be fine. Don't E-wrap this first row, because you're going to end up with very, very loose loops. Alright, so either flat in front of your pegs, or bend it in a little to create what's called a U-wrap, and knit off. Okay, when you're done with your last peg, you're done with your cast on, and now you're ready to start working on the actual knitting of your heel. And from this point out, we're just going to use an E-wrap knit stitch. And in order to keep nice edges, you're going to, you know, wrap all your pegs and knit off. But when it's time to turn around, because we're doing that flat panel, you're going to skip or slip these ends. Okay, when you're ready to turn around, you are not going to knit these pegs, and that's going to give you a nice clean edge. You're instead going to start by wrapping your second peg. Okay, so go ahead and wrap all your pegs again so that you have a loop on the bottom and one on the top. Okay, I wrapped all my pegs, and now I'm going to knit off. Okay, and again, every time you do that edge, you're gonna have a bit of a bulky stitch right here. Just pull this next one a little tighter, and that'll clean that up, and then just knit off. When you're done with that row, that's considered row number 1 of your heel. So now you're just going to continue to knit that flat panel where you're going back and forth until you have the number of rows that you need for your heel. Remember to slip or skip this first peg when you're ready to turn, and to pull a little bit extra on these first 2 pegs, these first stitches, which is going to tighten up that little bulk you're going to get there, and that's going to give you a nice clean edge. So just keep knitting the number of rows that you calculated for your heel, and then let's come back for the foot part. When you're done knitting your heel, remove your markers, and now wrap all of your pegs. Now all the pegs that you have been knitting your heel have 2 loops on each peg, but these front pegs, those 6 that you have marked off, only have 1 loop, and that's fine. That's the way we want it. You are going to E-wrap these back pegs, these that have the 2 loops, and these that are here in the front, which are now the first row, for your foot. For the front part, you are going to knit as a flat stitch. Okay, so you only have 1 row, one loop. You're going to lay your working yarn on, right on your peg, over the existing loop, and you're going to knit off. Now you're here back again where you have 2 loops. So go ahead and just knit the top over the bottom, just like you've been doing, and you're going to knit off on all of those pegs. You're going to find that your working yarn is no longer here on your first peg. Your first peg has now been moved 3 pegs down, and so now it's here. Okay? That's going to be now your starting point. And you can mark it if you'd like to or not. Either way is fine. Now, if you did as you were supposed to, which was to flat stitch those 6 pegs and E-wrap the rest of them, now you're left with 1 loop on each peg, and from this point on you will be E-wrapping all of your pegs until you get the number of rows that you need for your foot. But before you do that, if you look here, you're gonna see this loop right here. Okay, 1 here and 1 on this side, and we don't want that. We want this to look nice and neat, and so we're going to pick up that stitch and put it on the peg. So with your pick, just pick it up, push this loop down, and put it on top of your peg like that, and knit off. going to be a little tight. That's okay. Come over to the other one and do the same thing. Pick up that stitch and put it on your peg. It's going to give you nice clean corners. And find that bottom 2 loops or 1 loop, how many you have, and knit off. Okay, now you have nice clean edges, and you're going to wrap all of your pegs. You have finished row 1 of your foot, and now we're going to be working row 2. And like I said, you're going to keep knitting with E-wrap knit stitch until you get the number of rows that you calculated for the foot portion of your slipper. Keep knitting. When you're done knitting that foot portion, now it's time to close up. And so you're going to take your working yarn and wrap it around your loom. Okay, just once. And go ahead and cut your working yarn. Get your yarn needle and thread your yarn. And we're going to close this using what's called the gathered method. And basically all you're going to do is take your needle, feed it through your yarn up like this, and feed that working yarn through all the loops on your loom. And it's called the gathered method because it starts to pull together like this. Okay? And your loops are coming off your peg. So keep working. Once you've taken your project off the loom, go ahead and close the top up. And don't worry that it's in the side that you knit it. We are not going to turn it inside out. Not yet. Okay? So close up that little hole as tight as you can. And then let's crisscross to make sure that it's closed nice and tight. So go anywhere around. Okay, just a few times. We're going to sew this nice and tight. Okay, and pull on it one last time, and then make yourself a knot. And try to, put that knot under some knitting so it doesn't bother the person who's going to be wearing the sock. And that's it. It's nice and closed. Now we're going to move to the back side. Now we're on the other side, and this is where your slip knot is. So just undo the slip knot, and then you'll see that it is right here inside another loop. See how it sticks out like that? Okay, so pull on it so you see where it's coming from, which is right here, and go ahead and pull it out from inside that loop because you want it loose like this. Okay, and now we're going to go to the other end. Now this is optional. If this is something you're not comfortable with, don't do it. You can just sew it the way it is, but I like to clean up my edges, and this is a good practice just for any project. It cleans up and gets rid of these curls. Alright, so this was the end where your slip knot was. You're going to go to the other end, and then you're just going to start pulling on those loops. Okay, and as you pull on them, you'll see where they're coming from, and you'll pull that other side. Okay, and then you just continue to pull, and if it creates a knot or something and you want to like stop because it started to worry you, then just stop pulling on them and don't worry about it and go ahead. You're gonna be able to just sew it. Okay, but as you can see, it's very easy to pull these loose knots, these loose loops, and neaten up your project. See the difference between this area where you've tightened up your loose loops and this side where they're loose. Okay, so we're just going to keep going. Till we get to the other end. Alright, so just continue pulling on them. You're going to reach like the very last end of it, and you're going to see where it creates like a odd little area right here because it starts to come lower, and now it's closer to your slip knot. So just keep pulling, and this is the last little bit right here, and that's how much working yarn is pulled out from the loose loops. Now you're on this end, and we're going to sew this edge right here, which is what's going to create the heel. So you need to sew this up nicely. All right, get your yarn needle, thread your needle however you do that. Okay, so we're going to start from the very top of this back part right here. You see there's a little tip right here. That's the one we're going to get, and that's where we're going to start. And these loops are pretty wide, so you're going to sew each one of them at least 2 times. Okay, and we're sewing like we're wrapping around, and we're going to go looking for those loops that are on the edges. You might have to help your yarn along so that it rounds off. And again, put at least 2. Go through each loop at least 2 times. And this is going to help reinforce that. Now, the reason why we're looking for the loops on the very end and not those here on the inside is because we want to create this extra space right here, and that's what's going to help do that. If you get the loops that are all the way over here, it's going to completely close up, and we don't want that. All right, so keep going, sewing, like I said, each loop at least 2 times, and making sure that we're grabbing the ones that are all the way on the outside of the fabric. Okay, so we're here at the very end of it, and we want to make sure that we get that very last bit, because you don't want like little holes. You want to make sure that it's well secure and closed up. And now you finish this here, but you want this shoe to be rounded. So this is actually the inside of your shoe, not the outside. And so we want to round this off so that when we turn it around, you don't have like something that spikes out here. You want this nice and rounded. And to do that, you're going to help it to round off. You're just going to fold that little spike over, and you're going to sew it down. You don't have to do this. So if this doesn't make sense to you and it has you kind of like, I don't know, turning your head like a little confused puppy, then don't do it. It's not vital. It's really just a little bit extra for aesthetic reasons and not so much for functional. All I'm doing is making sure that there's not, you know, this little like point sticking out at the bottom. So I'm folding in that little end, that little spiky end that shows up. I'm just folding it down and sewing it. And these needles sometimes don't want to cooperate too well. So you see, it's not bunched up. It's nice and flat. And then you can just go ahead and make yourself a knot. And you're done, and what we're going to do now is go ahead and cut those extra threads. And when you get a chance, get a crochet hook and go ahead and feed these through so that, you know, it's nice and neat. And then just take your project and turn it over. And you see that it's nice and rounded. You have that extra little space right here, which is nice. It's not flat. And it's nice and neat here on the edges. All your edges look nice and neat. And now, there's your shoe, your slipper sock. And what I would suggest doing here, you could decorate with a button or whatever you like, a flower, a pom-pom, any way you want. But you want to make sure that, you know, whoever wears this is safe, especially if you have a slippery surface like tile, some concrete and some wood. This can get pretty slippery. Plus, you want your slipper sock to last as long as possible. So you can either put a leather piece on it, you know, go ahead and get your little cheat sheet here and you could shape it out, or you can get some stiff felt. This is not your regular flimsy felt, it's stiffer, and you can cut yourself out of shape, put it on your shoe by sewing it, or you could spray some glue, and then get some puffy paint. This is a glow in the dark, but Tulip makes a puffy paint. There's several people that make puffy paint, and just make yourself some dots and they will help to grip. What you want is to put something on here that's going to help your shoe to grip to the floor. So you can get some insoles and sew them or glue them on. I mean, there's I'm sure dozens of different ways that you can make your slipper sock more secure. And just to help this last a lot longer, there is a Scotch guard that is just for needlework, and you could spray it on and it'll help your slipper last longer. I hope you guys enjoy this project. It's one of my favorites, and I'll be making lots of these because right now we're real close to Mother's Day. So leave me your questions and your comments below, and until our next project, you guys have a good one. Ciao.